Geoff Duncan was the lieutenant governor in the state of Georgia. He has penned an op-ed essentially saying everybody needs to vote for Joe Biden. He, Republican, doesn't like Donald Trump, saw the stop the steal nonsense in Georgia, decided people need to stand for Joe Biden. He was on CNN talking with John Berman and Scott Jennings. Here's part of it.
I'm only speaking to those Republicans that are conservative like me. I've got a historical voting record that is as conservative as anybody. I put in the piece that I've been a Republican my whole life, unlike Donald Trump. And I think we've got to take our medicine. And it's painful. It hurts. It sometimes maybe doesn't seem like it makes sense. But if we're going to heal, we've got to move past Donald Trump. He's taking us to the bottom of the ocean, and some of us don't even realize it.
I get this a lot. And I will tell you, I appreciate Geoff Duncan's concerns with Donald Trump and the level of angriness that I think he has provoked in some people. But I really want you to listen to me right now. I want you to just follow along with me here. I think that Donald Trump's superpower, as I've always said, is to make the people who hate him behave like they think he does. But Donald Trump also inspires other people, his supporters, to just become belligerent, angry. I say this from experience. We had people show up at our house to threaten us when I said in 2016 I wouldn't support Trump. My kids were beat up and harassed and bullied. My daughter pushed to commit suicide by kids at school whose parents hated me so much because I didn't support Donald Trump that the kids decided, maybe if my kid killed herself, I might see the light. I know this, but I also know something else. Joe Biden is at war with American decency as much as Donald Trump is. And a lot of the Republicans who say we have to go with Joe Biden because Donald Trump is some sort of threat to our decency and our values, you're asking a lot of Americans whose 401ks are hurt, whose economic circumstances have been degraded by Joe Biden, whose daughters' scholarships are threatened because of the boys and girls sports. You're asking them to put your democracy ahead of their well-being. And there are a lot of Americans who look at the situation of this country and they think the country's not working for me, therefore it's broken. And so I'm not going to go side with the guy who's broken the country because the broken country doesn't work for me, and Donald Trump will. You're asking Americans, when you say we got to go vote for Joe Biden, where conservatives look at what Donald Trump has done to us, you're asking them to put an ideal ahead of their reality in many cases. I do think a lot of Americans are not going to vote in November. I hear from a lot of voters who are disaffected with both sides, who don't like either side, who despise Joe Biden but despise Donald Trump, and telling them they need to go vote for the guy they hate because you hate the other guy and they should too really isn't a sales pitch. Boeing, 2 whistleblowers are now dead. One, you can say, and my theory with the first guy who died in his truck of gunshot wound was, if I was really furious with Boeing, here's what I would do. I would tell everybody, hey, if something happens to me, it wasn't me. I'm fine. I'm good. I clearly wouldn't commit suicide. And then you go eat a bullet. And so everyone would go after the company that you've hated, despised, and were fighting in a lawsuit. And then the second guy dies. Now, the second guy dies of health reasons. He gets some sort of infection of some kind of dies, but it starts to look suspicious. But what we know, regardless of what the whistleblowers did or did not do, whether or not they died innocently or were murdered, we know that Boeing forged and falsified documents to get its planes in the air. We know that Blackstone, not BlackRock, Blackstone has been buying up American houses and turning Americans into renters and depriving them of the American dream. And housing scarcity is so bad in part because a lot of available homes were bought up by these private equity companies. I read the story the other day of some private equity company that was buying life insurance on random people, betting against them, hoping to cash in on life insurance policies. It reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park where, Jeffrey Goldblum's character says, you were so busy asking if you could do something, you didn't ask if you should do something. What does all of this have to do with Biden and Trump, the corruption and capitalism? Here's the problem. A capitalism ungrounded from morality is no better than communism. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And everybody's end goal is not to make a compelling product or service in which to get rich, but just to make money. And what happens is people unmoored from a morality in capitalism and see a capitalism that's making money for the sake of making money and depriving people of well-being. Those people aren't moving to socialism. Those people are moving to a technocracy, and the technocrats make the decisions. And we are arriving at that point in this country where the technocrats are dictating how we live our lives. The technocrats are dictating it. And the problem is that the technocrats hate people who don't have college degrees and live on the coast and have bought into all the global warming hysteria. And they're progressives. And their values are progressive. And they run the Biden administration. And because they run the Biden administration, they increasingly run an economy where people are giving up on the capitalists because the capitalists are behaving like greedy a-holes, just like the communists do. So when you come out and you tell people, to save our country, to save our movement, to save our ideals, you got to vote for Joe Biden. You're not meeting people where they're at. Where people are at is they're worried about their children. They're worried about the technocrats who have embraced the transgender agenda, which is anti-science, anti-biology, and anti-family, and embraced by the Biden administration and advanced by the Biden administration. They're worried about their kids' education, where the progressives wanted to close schools. They've been fighting school choice. The Biden administration ruthlessly opposed to school choice. In the states that have passed school choice, the Biden administration tried to pass regulations through the Department of Education that would crack down on it. There's inflation, there's the economy, there's education, there are cultural values. The elite and the technocrats who are increasingly running this country because capitalism has given up on actually having a standard other than making money. Forget the goods and services that we should be making to make money. Let's just make money for the sake of making money. Everything else be damned. You've got a lot of people out there who are burnt out on the system who do not think it's working for them. And when you tell them you've got to continue to vote for the people who prop up that system that is out to get them, you're not giving them a way out of this. I understand people who don't like Donald Trump. Not a fan myself. But to tell those people you've got to side with a party that is hostile to your values, hostile to your family, hostile to your job, hostile to your way of life, hostile to your freaking dishwasher, you've kind of lost the plot in my mind. It's one thing to tell people, the only way we're going to change this is to stay home, and part of the stewardship of your vote is just don't vote. Or skip that race, go vote and skip that race so that the parties, the Democrats and Republicans who foist on us bad nominees see that so many people are opting out. The way to win is to offer a better candidate. That there's a stewardship angle there. But for a lot of Americans, they're not going to opt out. They're not going to sit on the sidelines. They're not going to say, I want my voice to be heard, therefore I'm not voting because I want them to see me on the sidelines refusing to vote. No, what a lot of Americans are going to do is they're going to go vote for Donald Trump because they see this administration as hostile to their way of life. They see him as hostile to their dishwasher and to their refrigerator and to their washer and dryer and water heater and car. They see them as hostile to their schools. They see them as hostile to their kids. They see them as hostile to their values. And telling people you got to go support our democracy, so you got to go vote for Joe Biden, really doesn't do jack for people who see this administration at war with their way of life. I get the inclination to be opposed to Trump. I get the inclination to want to sit home. But to tell a Christian, to tell a person of faith, you need to go vote for the godless guy on that side because the godless guy on this side is a sinner. Well, if there's godlessness on both sides, you're going to wonder on which side are they going to at least protect my family. To tell the Jewish person, you got to go vote for Joe Biden, who is making kissy face with Hamas and anti-Semites, it's a bridge too far for a lot of people, I think. Our systems are failing us. Our institutions are failing us. The media is not out to serve integrity and tell us the truth. They're out to advance a left-wing narrative. Major corporations in this country, they've been picked as the winners by the government, and so they're there to prop up the government. They're not there to really innovate. They're not really there to provide jobs for people. They're there to make money. They're there to cash in, to get out while the getting out is good before China reigns supreme. So the technocrats who hate everyone, they're in charge, they're making the decisions, they're guiding the economy, and they hate the middle class, they hate flyover country. If you're between the Rockies and the Appalachian Mountains, well, God have mercy on your soul because the government will not. All I'm asking is you at least try to understand that the people who are voting for Donald Trump are not bad people, and they're tired of being treated like the enemy by Washington and New York. They're tired of being treated like the enemy by the newsmakers. They're tired of being treated like the enemy by the cultural trendsetters in Hollywood who make the movies, who make the redneck preacher from the South the bad guy. If you can't understand why people are voting for Donald Trump, you're not going to be able to solve the problems. And to tell people, to tell conservatives, you've got to vote for a person who is hostile to your values, I think that's a bridge too far. I think it's easier to just tell people don't go vote, and your voice will be heard by not voting. And by not voting, the parties will realize they got to do better. Like Bush in 2000 realized the evangelicals who sat it out could have won the race handily, and so they made changes institutionally and philosophically within the Bush administration to advance an agenda that evangelicals would like. And guess what? The evangelicals turned out in 2004 big time and gave Bush the majority vote. Our capitalist system has forgotten the plot. The plot is not to make money for the sake of making money, but to make a good or product that other people find beneficial in an arm's length transaction, and there you make your money. The technocrats have forgotten the plot. We are a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, not of the bureaucrats, for the bureaucrats, and by the bureaucrats. And I think our politicians have forgotten the plot. People are not voting to save democracy. They're voting to save their family. And if you can't reach them at that level, well, you're not going to reach them. And you know who is? A guy named Donald Trump.